The Remarkable People Podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People Podcast. Listen, do, repeat. For life.
Hello, friends. I'm David Pasqualone, and welcome to this week's remarkable episode of the Remarkable People Podcast, The Kimberly Bell Story. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a emotional roller coaster of a week. Kimberly truly has been through the gambit. She had a mom and dad that abandoned her, rejected her, pretty much said, hey, you're on your own. She was raped. She got into bad relationships. She was part of a repeating cycle. When she was a child, even though she was hyper intelligent, she was labeled as mentally handicapped because she had memory issues from the trauma she faced. And the story just goes on and on. So she's going to take you on this journey of her childhood and the dysfunction, how it carried through her teen years into her adulthood, and then how she finally found healing and forgiveness and freedom. And she helps you work through the process yourself. So seriously, get your pen and paper. This is an incredible episode. Like it, share it, rate it, review it, but please apply it. All knowledge, especially real, true knowledge, comes from God. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode, but it won't do you, me, Kimberly, or any human good unless we apply it. So be excited. It's an upbeat episode. Don't think it's too serious, but the content and the subject matter is heavy. But Kimberly's a remarkable woman, and you're going to truly love this episode. Enjoy. Hey, Kimberly, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm excellent. I was just telling our listeners about you, and they are pumped to hear your story. So at this time, if you can start off at your birth and go past, present, and then we'll get into the future with your remarkable journey, we would so appreciate it. How's that sound?
Great. Sounds great. Sounds great.
All right. So where did it all start for Kimberly?
Okay. So it all started in the beginning. From before I was 5 years old, I stayed with my biological mother and father and my sister, who's 2 years older than me. And I can remember feeling a disconnection from my biological mother. I don't know what it was, but even from combing my hair, getting me dressed, feeding me, it was always a resentment attitude. Not loving, quite different from my biological father and my biological sister whom I was with. Even though my biological father was in and out the house, and it seemed like we were always rushing, either going to go to church or going to neighbor's house or playing. I still remember, the sensitivity that was loving from those two. My sister and I had a very good relationship as far as she was my oldest sister, loving, played with her, but again, for my biological mother, it was just a disconnection, before I was even turned 5, I just would just look at her and always feel, what is it about me, or what could I do to have this woman put her arms around me, hold me, hug me, tell me she loves me? But it didn't happen. And so I grew up with that void, with that longing, that yearning for this particular person, which is my mother, whom I only knew, to give me some type of validation that she loved me. It never came. So I remember physical abuse happening in and out of my family with my biological father, and chaotic arguing, as I was saying, he would be in and out. I'm not sure, being that young, what the arguments was about. It was clarified along, throughout the years when I got older, that, it was, running around, infidelity pretty much on both parts, but I just knew it was chaotic in the household, and it was not the abnormal of seeing physical abuse or her crying or her sad, or, my father being angry and, putting his hands on her. So one particular incident that changed my life forever was the worst fight that I had ever witnessed. My sister and I, we were coming home from either daycare or school, and they were arguing, they were in the midst of it. And I remember us being told to run out the house and try to get in the car. Both of them ended up going in the car, and we drove around. As the story started unfolding, they were trying to find somewhere for us to stay, but everywhere they were taking us, I guess that, the arguments, that we wasn't able to get dropped off. So we ended up, the night had fell. I remember it being dark, and we ended up to a gas station, and it was just like it was yesterday. We stopped at the gas station, and this particular last fight that I witnessed, he just, with a closed fist, just hit her in her face everywhere that he could. Yeah, I remember him having her hair, she had very thick hair wrapped around his hand, and I just remember blood just going. And my sister, both of us was in the back seat, just went hysterical. She just started crying and trying to fight him. And I just remember just being numb. I was just totally frozen. I couldn't cry. I couldn't speak. I just looked, and so many things was going in my head, like imagining, this beautiful woman that I always wanted this love from. What in the world did she do so bad to have this happen? And why was my dad so angry? And, just so many thoughts was running, but mentally, I couldn't speak. I just felt like, as I said, just numb, just totally frozen. And so we ended up making our way to my grandparents' house, which is her parents. And they had words, of course, for him to bring, their daughter at that back home in that type of predicament. And everyone was so upset. And I remember him wanting to take, I believe my brother, or I believe he was born, but little. It's so vague, but I do remember my biological mother, saying to him to take me. And all I could remember was wanting my sister to go. Why was I going? But yet I was a little hopeful, because I was with my biological dad. At least we were going somewhere. So he ended up dropping me off. He took me to his sister's house. Now I'm already traumatically, not knowing, after I just witnessed this, what's going on, what's going to happen to me, and him. But we ended up going to his sister's home, his oldest sister and her husband, and he was still quite upset. I remember him, trying to tell my aunt the story, and he looked at me and he said, "You're going to stay here. I'll be back." So they showed me the room that slept in that night by myself. And I remember hopeful, one, but scared, that because these were people that I never stayed a night with. I trusted what he said, that he would come back. I was still confused about what had happened and wondering how my sister is doing, because we were close, and waiting for the next morning for someone to tell me what's going to happen to me, or my dad's going to return. So that never happened. The next morning happened.
Hey, I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to clarify some things before you move on.
Mhm.
At this point, how old were you roughly?
5.
5.
5.
And you had a sister that was younger?
2 years older than me.
Oh, 2 years older. And then you had a
yes.
younger brother.
And yeah, I believe, see, the order of us was my older sister. She's 2 years younger, older than me. Then it's myself, and then it was my brother. She did finally have the boy, and then she had 2 other children from my father after us. Yeah.
But at this point in the story, there's 3
At
of
this
you.
point in the story, yeah.
And then the last question I have on this is the distance that you felt between your mother and you. Did your
Mhm.
sister also feel that distance, or did they feel close?
No, they never felt that. They felt close. They still, yeah.
They felt close. Okay, I just wanted to clarify and
Yes.
communicate those dots. So you're at people who are almost, you've never stayed the night with them. You don't have a
No.
close relationship. Pick up there.
Yes, but I do know that that was his sister. So she was the oldest of them, which was my paternal aunt and her husband. So they said to me, this is where you're going to stay, and we love you. You might look different than us, but we love you. And I pretty much just got that. I never knew that they legally went to adopt me until later. When I went to get a job, that's when the first time I ever seen a birth certificate that was changed. I just pretty much started as their child when I got to school. During my elementary school years was my last name, which was Bell. I don't even recall if I ever was a Clark from my biological. I did not get anyone to pretty much sit me down and explain what was happening. Meantime, my father was coming in and out because, of course, he had a relationship with his sister, which is my aunt, and he was moving, on with his life after having 2 other children by my mother. They finally got a divorce, and he would come basically, and he would say, I'm going to come and get you. And a lot of times there were promises that never was fulfilled. I would get my stuff packed. I would be sitting, waiting for hours, until one day my adopted dad gave him a sit down talk, and was like, I remember his voice kind of changed. So I know that was very important for him to speak up for me and pretty much tell him, to pretty much stay away if he's going to be promising me that he was going to come and get me, to stay with him, and he doesn't, because it's doing more harm than good to me. And so during those times, I would ask to go and see my sister and my siblings and go and see my mother. I would do some crying times when I would say, out of hurt and pain, I want to go and stay with my mom, regardless of her treating me. And I knew she didn't treat me like my oldest sister, or even like me. I knew as a child that this woman didn't like me, but I loved her. So I would cry and want to stay with her. And I would hear my adopted mom tell me, well, out of her hurt, and not even having the knowledge, because no one prepared them for adopting a child that had already lived with her biological family, is that she would say, I don't understand you. You're crazy that you still want to stay with your mother, and this woman mistreated you. Why would you want to stay with someone? We love you. Why would you want to stay with someone that's been mean to you, that has, abused you? And so,
Which for an adult thinking through things makes total sense. But
right.
for a child with a
Child, exactly.
God-given, we're all born to love our mother and father,
Right.
no matter how much of a
Exactly.
disappointment they are.
You're
So
right.
both of you were, I mean, you were a child, but
Exactly.
she didn't get it. She missed that day of school.
Right.
All
And
right.
then those times back in the 70s, they didn't even have the resources that they have now in educating, people to, so their belief was prayer and only prayer through, we were AME Zion, and they were really heavy in church. So, but you're absolutely right. And my adopted dad was my savior, because I remember him, speaking up for me and saying to her, little mom, if that's what they called each other, little mom and daddy Bill. He said, little mom, if she wants to, go and see her mom, that's her mom, let her, So I just want to put that out there. Then, with the conversation, they would let me go and see my biological mom every now and then, because of me wanting to. From what my understanding, it wasn't her wanting me to come, it was me wanting to come. And so as they see me coming back from visits with her and my siblings, worse mentally than I left, they put a stop to it. And when I said worse, it's because me growing up, I still was feeling that disconnection. It was almost like I was a visitor. It wasn't like I was her child. I remember her giving me food stamps, just like she was. And at that time, they were the little papers and different
It was
colors.
like paper money.
Yeah, paper money in different colors. She would give me almost the same amount that my other sibling and say, go ahead to the store. It was nothing different. And it was so hurtful, because if you can understand, David, I'm up here secretly inner yelling, saying, maybe this is the day that this woman won't let me go back. She'll love me and say, Kim, you're going to stay with us. And it never came. So after a while, those visits stopped when my parents would see a difference of me coming back.
Yeah, and it's so common, sadly. This is something that's really hard. I grew up an only child. My parents were never married. My dad wanted nothing to do with me. And all I ever wanted to do was please God and have a strong family. Love my kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you see all around you the divorce rate. I don't care if you say you're a Christian or not. It's the same. Right. It's 60+%, 50+%, depending on the statistics. And the kids are suffering for the parents' inability to stick it out.
Right.
And what you went through, I'm so sorry. And it breaks my heart. But it's too common that, you're there, you're longing for your mother's love, or your father's love, your case, your mother, and she's not giving it to you. So then you come back to the people who love you and are caring for you.
Right.
And it's an emotional, I almost said a bad word. It's an emotional storm, right?
Yes. It's the same roller coaster, but you got a better one, storm. It was absolutely a roller coaster storm.
Yeah. And I don't know if this was for you, and we live in a different generation, but like when you and I were growing up, there was hard lines to the wall for the phone. Now everybody's got a cell phone. But I know kids who they talk to their mother or father. I've observed it. And then they're like emotionally distressed. They don't realize that they're not making the connection. They're not mentally mature enough, but they spend 5 hours just pissed off at the world because they feel that rejection. So did you recognize the pain? Like, obviously you didn't process it how we're discussing it, but your parents that loved you and adopted you, they saw it and they dealt with it. But did you come back depressed or angry, or did you recognize you were coming back emotionally wounded?
Not at that time. After going through young adult and making different choices and decisions, trying to get validations from other people. And even I do recall going through, and I asked my therapist about it later. I went home and I had a snack bowl, and one of the visits I came home, and I guess I had depressed, this rejection again. And I found that someone had went in the snack bowl that was designated just for me. And I had a meltdown. I had a meltdown. I started crying and yelling, and they were like, Kim, it's okay. It's okay. But my thing was, as the therapist brought out, was the justice is that someone took that control from me and went into my snack bowl that was designated for me and me only, and took something out. And it started, and like she had brought out to let me know, the root of it was from that rejection and that abandonment that I had no control of it. So now I want justice because no one asked me. No one, you get what I'm saying? So it was
100%, 100%.
Now I recall that one meltdown, and they had no idea. They were trying to, let me know it was okay and stuff like that. But I do know that I try to suppress, and that's what I did, because of the fact that no one talked to me, or no one really initiated that I had a voice and that I could say how I feel. That's why I'm a very strong advocate to parents telling, their children and asking them how you feel, and let them know that emotions are real and it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel angry. I suppressed my voice. I would not pretty much talk. And I got into the little depression in 8 or 9 that music was my outlet, the radio, and in my room. But it was a form of depression, of aiding, that. And then I was misdiagnosed because of that silence and that suppressing my voice, that I couldn't remember. My memory was strained because of all the traumatic experiences that I went through. Here, my dad is going on with his life, and he remarries, starts having another family. David, he's coming in and out my mother's house. Here I'm 10 and 11, and talking to his sister, pretty much updating her on his life and his kids that he's having, that I'm literally confused and wondering, does he even know that I'm his child? Because the way he's addressing me and the way I'm seeing him, he's just like, I done gave you to my sister. Now that's your mother, that's your father. I have nothing to do with you. And it was hurtful. It was like you said, the roller coaster storm. Like this was like hitting from all degrees. My biological mother, now my biological father. What in the hell what is the purpose of me being here? Pretty much.
Yeah, and
at the same time, here you got these adoptive family pouring all their love and attention, trying to do whatever they know the best to do, how they were raised in their era, to give me the stability and the love that they feel that a child needs.
Yeah, and that's just so hard. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. This episode's about you, but your father and mother's background, how they live and parent, affects you. What was your dad's background? Did he come from a broken home, 5 siblings, 20 siblings, 1 sibling, no sibling? What was his background like?
He had a lot of siblings. Like I said, his sister that raised me was the oldest of them. I do know he had a lot of siblings, and I'm not sure that, I don't believe that his father was in the household with his mother.
And then what about your mother? What do you know about her background?
I do know that her mother and father was together, and she had a lot of siblings too.
But she had a traditional home, father, mother in the house.
Mm-hmm. Very strict.
I don't want to jump ahead in your story, but I have questions about your mother. So continue your story, and I may backtrack to ask them in the future if it doesn't come up. So please continue.
Oh, okay. So like I said, in the elementary years, I had to battle with the bullying, with the misdiagnosis that I went through the testing in the elementary, kindergarten to 1st grade, and they had diagnosed me mild retardation. So I was in resource
Yes.
for
And
the,
we have
Mhm.
listeners all over the world. Again, I didn't mean to just cut you off, but we have listeners all over the world. So what Kimberly's talking about is in the American public school system. I'm not going to get into that. There's serious problems with the American public school system, but they give you tests when you go to school. They'd classify you, and there was different programs and they were called different things.
Right.
But Kimberly was suffering from trauma, what a
Trauma.
lot of people call today as PTSD. There's all different
Yes.
terms for it. Go back
Yes.
to World War I, they called it shell shock.
Yes.
But it's not just for soldiers. And what Kimberly was dealing with, she experienced memory loss, which is very common. That doesn't mean you're not intelligent. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you other than the trauma has disconnected parts of your brain.
Well,
So
and
that's
the memory loss was what in the intellectual disability was I couldn't retain information. Like we would go through our numbers from 1 to 20. The next day, I couldn't remember past 10. But like you said, the trauma, I could remember everything in details from from 5, that traumatic experience all the way up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a real thing. And I personally did not believe this. I thought, no, this isn't true. And then I had major trauma in 2015, and I have a hearing issue where I have perfect hearing, yet I can just be sitting there and not hear people. My brain audible. It's my story. I'm not going to go into it. Wouldn't take your time. But that's when my eyes were open. I had multiple doctors, multiple counselors, and then I get a hearing test. She knows nothing about my background. And she's like, you have PTSD. I'm like, what? Why did you say that? And she's like, your hearing is impeccable, but your brain isn't picking it up. And I'm like, okay, I submit, God. What are you trying to teach me? So you had that at a child's age. People didn't understand it back then.
No.
So what was that like going through school? Did they make you feel like you were stupid, or how?
Yeah. Because like you said, in that era, in the 70s, now they have really went a milestone with the special ed and now not making those classes inclusive and separated and everything. Back then, resource room was resource, and that's exactly what they called them. The children knew that I was going in that room every day and not joining them unless it was during the specials, the gym and recess. So in recess, lots of times I would get bullied, and it took David for about 3 years with that same resource teacher that I found my voice in some type of way and just said to her, I don't want to go out to recess. I want to help you. And then she was like, Kim, why? And I would say, because, they tease me. They pick on me. They call me the little, retarded girl, but I don't think I even told her what they said. I just said they were teasing me, and she said, well, you can be my helper. And I remember that resource teacher, and I even gave her, I ran into her about 3 or 4 years ago, and she remembered my face, but, to all the educators there, that was one woman, and she wasn't the same culture as my parents or myself, but she saw something in me. And she said to me, she said, you're a special child. She said, I don't care if I have to work with you every year. I'm not going to let you go. And I found trust in her, which this was one of the people besides my adopted dad that I found would fight for me and that I could trust. And so that's what she did. She stayed with me throughout my whole elementary school years. And then I remember praying in 6th grade, and I said, because my adopted dad would always be praying to God, and he would always, try to feed me, besides going to church with them, the spiritual background. He would talk to me about love constantly. He would say to me, Kimmy, no matter what, you love, no matter what. God loves you. So do Daddy Bill. So do little mom. But God loves you more. Always love, and because God is love. And so he would always make sure that I knew about love and instill that in me, and some scriptures and some hymns. And I remember him praying in the middle of the night, sometimes during the daytime. And I said, gosh, I said, he is always praying. Maybe this prayer might work for me. So I remember in 6th grade, I just said a little childlike prayer. I never wanted anyone to ever feel sorry for me, even though I felt like I didn't have a voice set. I just wanted someone to hear me. I wanted someone to know how I felt, but I never wanted anyone to feel sorry for me. Like my resource teacher, when I told her about what I was going through, I didn't want her to feel, I just wanted her to solve the problem. I didn't want her to feel sorry for me. I just wanted her to not let me have to go out to recess and continue to deal with that. But I said to God in this childlike prayer in 6th grade that I just didn't want to be different. I knew that they knew that I was different. I said, I want to learn. I want to be like the other kids. So touch me like I hear my dad talking to you. And it was a miraculous. I can only explain it like that, because from 6th grade to 7th grade testing, you would not know that I was in resource. 7th and 8th grade, I was on honor roll every term. You would have to go back to my elementary school years and say, this is amazing. This is not the same child on paperwork, because on paperwork, statistics said that that mild retardation, that I would never read or write effectively. And pretty much my first doctor's appointment that they took me to, that I had that pediatrician all the way up until I was like 14 or 15, that I would be subject to abuse my own child because of what how they categorized me, they labeled me.
And back then, I don't know if you picked up on it, they had to, I almost said a bad word again. That's twice in this episode. I need to get right with God. No, it really gets me mad. That when you and I were growing up during that age, doctors were recommending sterilization of children. I mean, that's just pure evil, but they were classifying me and you as, oh, fit mother, not fit mother.
Right.
Sterilized. And that's just evil.
Right.
So my question was, do you remember that? Did he say that to you? Or was that not a known issue?
No.
Okay. I just want to know, because that's traumatic alone, that one thing.
Yeah, but it was clear that on paper that what I had been through, I was more subject to give away one of my children or abuse one of my children. Yeah. Because like you said, back then, that's how they diagnosed and categorized you.
And there's some statistical truth with numbers, 100%. There's learned behavior. There's biblical truth with generational sins.
Right.
But it's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
Especially if you have a family that
it's
loves
not,
you.
it's not like everyone. It's not like everyone do.
Exactly. If you have a loving family and a resource teacher, someone in your life intervening, that's what God uses to change your future and destiny.
Yes.
So, okay. So now you have this literally miraculous year.
I have this miraculous.
And then where does life go from there for Kimberly?
From 7th to 8th grade, it was one of the best highlights. I started feeling like I was part of a family. Feeling like the trust definitely was being built with my mother and father that was raising me. I was still never getting any gifts or calls from my biological mother or father to assist there. I just want to put that out there, that they were still part of my life. No, never. Yeah. So 8th grade, around 12 going on 13, there was an uncle that was part of my adopted mother and my biological father's life. He was considered pretty much one of the other kids as their brother that was raised with them. So this man was introduced to me as an uncle. And he came in our life. Now, this man had a history of doing prison time for molesting an infant, but he came into our life with my adopted mother, as her being the oldest sister of all of them. And I remember him going to church with us. And she was saying, oh, and you know what, Kim, this uncle, his birthday's the same day as yours. He's a fool over you. He loves himself some Kim. And he was very nice. I took me to the store, would always get me candy and, whatever I wanted. And, really capitalized on that part that my mom, was saying that our birthday's the same day. So he started going to church with us, meeting us at our house on Sunday morning, going to church. So one particular Sunday, he went to the altar and renewed himself. Not long after that Sunday had happened, that he renewed himself and got saved and joined that church, he was able to move in with us. And I remember my mom having a conversation with my dad about it, and my dad, gave her the okay. And I know they were talking about, because this was in the scripture that we were taught, that once someone ask God to forgive them for their sins, they're a new creature. All sins are passed away. They're just, God gives you a clean slate. It wasn't a good 2 months that he was there living with us that he started molesting me, fondling me. And so it tore my, I guess, progress.
No, that's an excellent word. You literally were making progress. You're finally finding freedom.
The progress down, just back to, is this really happening to me? What purpose, And it really confused me, because here I'm at an age, I didn't even have, I didn't get my menstrual cycle until after he left, but I'm still at an age where some things that he was doing was confusing me, that it felt good, but yet you're telling me while you're doing this that you love me. And this is, David, all I've readily wanted was somebody just to love me and show it. So I'm confused. Is this is not right, but is it right? And so that happened close to a year.
So he was telling you, I love you, and oh, you're wonderful. He was like totally messing with you.
You're my baby. It's nothing that I wouldn't do for you. I love you. Yeah.
So when this all happened, how did it finally stop? Or did he get caught?
He finally found as my adopted mom said, a worldly woman that took him out of church. But that was my ticket. And ironically, when he left, I was depressed. I was so sad. It took me months to get myself together, and they didn't even know it, because the attention was gone.
Yeah, and you were miswired, not through fault of your own, but that kind of abuse completely rewires a human, not even a child or an adult. I mean, when you give yourself to someone sexually as an adult, you're joining together, and there's a bond made for eternity. So when you're a child being raped and you were neglected as a child, so now you're like, oh, this is attention. I mean, there's so many wires being crossed.
Right.
Now, did you ever talk with someone about the molestation, or did he go off and just not that it would be your fault, but did he go off and continue to molest other people? Were you able to talk about it and he get arrested? Where did that story go?
No, I'm not sure. I just know the story about the infant, the baby, long time ago. But I know that I never told my adopted mom until my adopted dad had passed away. I was grown and married to my second husband when I finally told her. I started having nightmares. I the besides the kissing in the mouth and the funneling in the breast, I started having difficulties with this second husband of mine. It was like a trigger. And I started dreaming. And this is what made me open. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna have to tell her. I didn't get to tell my doctor dad because, I felt the guilt. I didn't, I didn't want him to have to deal with anything else. My adopted dad, feeling that burden of not being able to, had protected me. It happened. This was right underneath their roof while they were going to bed. And he was so manipulating about it by saying to them, oh, it's a movie I want to show Kim, and I'm going to teach her about, what's the theme of the movie, or it was either like a family movie or a Christian movie or whatever. And I'll make sure she goes to bed right after it and just let her stay up. It wasn't every night, but probably 2 or 3 nights out the week that would happen. And, I didn't want to put that burden on my father. So like I said, after he passed away and when I started having those triggers and the little anxiety and nightmares and stuff, I first told my husband at that time. And then I told my adopted mom.
Yeah. And okay, so we have a gap between when this happened and we moved out and, when you started dealing with it, because that's what happens. A lot of people suppress it. Some people, it blacks out of their mind. They don't remember it happened. And most people, there's shame.
Yeah.
And there's guilt. And it's not even shame and guilt you need to bear. I mean, you were a child and this guy totally manipulated you.
Right.
So let's continue with that story and we'll go back. But before, oh man, there's so much to your story to unpack. I actually want to, I don't know, I feel led to do this now and then we're going to continue. But there's probably people who are emotionally connecting with you right now and they're ready to check out and shut off the episode because it's just too much.
Right.
For the little girl who's been molested, for the little boy who's been molested, for the child who's been completely rejected, neglected, like you, abused. Before we go on any further, what message do you have for them to give them hope? And where's the step? Where do they start the healing? And then we're going to get to the adult child, like where you were married already, but for right now, if there's children listening or teenagers listening and they've had this horrific experiences, some of these, all of them, one of them, where do you suggest they start the healing?
Accepting it. It did happen. It did happen. And you're not responsible. It's not your fault. Except it wasn't a dream. It was reality and it did happen. And it's okay to know that it's sad, it hurt, it was wrong, not right, shouldn't have happened, not your fault, nothing that you could have done to change it. But you can be better if you would just accept and embrace God has so much more for you. And to share, to speak openly, you have a right of how you felt. You're angry. It's okay to be angry. But don't let that anger define you.
Now let's talk about accepting, because accepting is one of those loaded words, even in Christian circles. Accept and forgive. Those are words that, like, for instance, this is perfect in your story. I've had discussions multiple times with people who say you need to forgive. And I'm like, I have forgiven, but I'm not a fool. There's consequences for people's sins. And I'd be negligent, like exactly what happened to you. And I'm not saying your stepmom and dad were negligent on purpose. They had a good heart. But listen, man, the dude's a molester. He's a child molester.
Right.
great, help them out, but don't put them in your house with your kid.
Right. Right.
And that's the difference. And if someone was truly repentant, I believe they'd be the first to say, I don't belong with a child. Or if they're
Right.
an alcoholic, I don't belong working at a restaurant where I have access
Right.
to alcohol.
Right.
So I got to pull it together because I want to punch I'm like, and so I get angry about this stuff because children are so innocent and pure. And then you have these idiot adults who are like, oh, forgive. It's all forgone. It's under the blood. It is. But
Right.
even the Lord has consequences that we need to deal with.
Right.
So these boundaries that need to be put in place, you're talking to children who've been harshly and horribly abused. When someone says, oh, just forgive and move on, or just accept it and move on, that's frustrating. Give us a couple steps to start accepting it in a biblical, healthy way.
I would say the starting steps and accepting in a healthy way is to protect yourself physically and mentally. Change, like you said before, I had to accept, first of all, my whole journey, my whole story, that this actually happened. I never really viewed my story that has happened so sad until I wrote it down, until I started really talking about this and understanding that I had carried the weight of people's actions and behavior so long and felt responsible for it that I lost myself. And that I have accepted that my journey hasn't been a fairy tale and still hasn't ended up as a fairy tale, but I'm only responsible for what I do. And how I live my life, how I choose to live my life. And I choose to live my life knowing the difference from love and what isn't love, and that I have to fight for myself and not to feel that there is someone out there that will fight for me. Because if I couldn't find the love for myself to fight for myself, then every other places that I looked, failed me because I didn't get that. So even down to children or parents that's hearing this, that has had similar stories of this rejection and abandonment and child molestation, when you want change, you'll react to those changes and choose that best life for you, but also find that fight within yourself, for yourself, through writing it, words, speaking it, sharing it, getting a mental health provider, but fight for you. And only you can do it. Only you can choose that and make those changes,
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And then let's pick up now. So you're molested, the scumbag moves out. Pick up your story from there.
So I believe that.
And sorry if that sounded insensitive.
No, that's okay.
That's just such a horrible thing to me.
I believe that depression had went into, as you were saying, my first experience of sexuality was so confused, and also a silent cry that I didn't have my older sister. I'm the only child in their home. It's a strict home. I did have a couple of neighborhood friends, but even during the confusing of this sexuality, I couldn't share with them. I could just only outwardly react to how I was feeling.
Now,
And
at
huh?
this point in your life, you're a teenager.
Yes.
Did
Yep.
you feel like dirty? Did you, not that you are, but I'm saying, did you feel deceived? Did you feel dirty? Did you feel unworthy? And then did you find yourself drawn to be more promiscuous, or drawn to be more, I don't want to be with a guy? Where did you fall? Because when kids are abused, they usually fall on one extreme or the other.
It was, I had it all, because I didn't know, and I'm in the household without any other kids, so I don't know. I'm drawn to a sexuality that felt good, whether it was with a female or male, but I didn't know, how to express it or even to talk about it. I just know that. And I want to backtrack, because he never penetrated me. He scared the crap out of me when he showed me himself. But that every time that would happen, when it would get close to the penetration, I would run. But everything else, from fondling from every area on my body, that happened. But I think even with that was even a trigger, because this is the first time I've ever seen a man, erect, and I'm that young, and it scared me. So I'm almost 15 now, and I'm starting to get attention, from, boys around and everything like that. And I remember seeing this guy that was coming back and forth in our area driving. Of course, that was cool. You see somebody driving, and I was with a neighborhood friend, and she's still one of my childhood friends now. And she was saying, they're bad news, da, 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 da. Anyway, make a long story short, he ended up lying about his age, but he was older. And I started skipping school. I was doing well in high school. But again, that foundation of this sexuality was still hadn't been healed, hadn't been dealt with, hadn't been exposed, hadn't been treated. So I'm now looking at us, these teenage feelings in a different lens of very confused and not knowing what I was. So I was probably a little flirtatious. I probably was, but even so, I could remember being scared to be vocal. And I was skipping school, and I remember, several times, I can't even say a couple of times, that he would get me cornered, and we were about to go all the way. And I would say either my cycles get ready to come on, or my stomach's hurting, or whatever, and it wouldn't happen. So this went on for several times till eventually, and now, mind you, I'm not talking to my adopted family, because they're strict. They're about, church. They even had little names that you called your body parts that was in their era. And my kid and my childhood friends was telling me the right names. They were like, that's not. And here, my adopted mom was saying, if you get pregnant by, you can get pregnant by swallowing a black watermelon seed, and the intercourse, if a guy does something to you, put his part in you, it'll bust you right open, and you'll feel like bumblebees and sting. All these kind of myths, so this is what I grew up in. But still, you can't take that sensuality you're getting to be a teenager away. That's just normal. So I remember this particular day, I was all excused out, and I didn't want to. I was at his uncle's house. I had to skip school again. And that was how my virginity was taken. And he was out of school, found out I was 15, he was 16, 18, 19 or 20. So the first time I had sex, and he breaks my virginity, I get pregnant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So now you're in a home that's
Now I'm in a home.
ultra conservative. Your teenage pregnancy. Where does it go from there?
Woo, that it went to another storm. So
We can laugh now, but I'm sure you weren't laughing
right.
then.
Whoa, Lord, that went to another storm. And because they were so active in their church that the pastor ended up being my papa. We had a meeting. We had to go over. I remember my adopted mom taking me over there to their house, to their parsonage, and letting him know that I had got pregnant, which was very humiliating. But once again, my mind, all this is happening, and it's just, as you were saying, these wires is just going like, what in the world? And now y'all's image is more important to me, more important than me, because I wouldn't be at this man's house, and I remember even looking so sad, because she initiated a conversation. She says, well, Kim's got something to tell you. And I'm just like, oh my God, and I, just had to come out. And so here in that in the 70s, born in the 70s, it wasn't like it is now. You're going to school pregnant. So it was already humiliating that I'm the oddball, people knowing that I got pregnant and I had to go to school. Finally, it got to I was back in communication with my older sister, because we're still in our hometown. Where I got adopted at and raised was still in my hometown, where my biological mother and father could come and see me or see about me 15, 20 minutes tops. So all this is still in my hometown. So in the high school years, in junior high school, I got back connected with my siblings, especially my oldest sister. So telling my oldest sister, I know that hurt her, that I got pregnant, at 15. And I remember when I went to the doctor right after I did cross country track, and I was very, very tiny, very small built. And my mom saying to the doctor, you can't be telling me that she's pregnant now. I'm still giving her Babs negative. Pregnant where? And I was like 22 weeks or something like that. Like I was really, 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 really pregnant. By the time I found out, I had fainted, and I went to the nurse. And so she told me that she was going to tell my dad that, my adopted dad here, this is my hero. This is the one that, started this foundation about God and everything. So I remember her telling me that I would have to tell the pastor, my papa at that time, but she would come home, she would go and tell my dad. She said, and he's going to be upset, but I'll tell him. So I knew when she told him, David, the remainder of those months, I don't think he knew what to say. He never said anything. He was just so solid. So I could feel the hurt. But at this time, my body's changing, my mind is changing. I felt like I lost my dad. I felt like I lost another person in my life that I had built trust. He said nothing through the whole time, the range of time that I was pregnant.
Now you're saying he said nothing about the pregnancy, or
nothing about the
at
pregnancy,
all?
Nothing to me.
Oh, wow. It's not even like, hey, how are you today? It was just silence. He didn't know what to do. And then now let me ask you another question too. That's incredibly hurtful, and I'm going to let you continue the story. But when you say papa, that's a cultural thing. Was that like a godfather, or was he physically related?
Yeah, it was like their pastor for years. It was like a godfather.
Like a
relationship
godfather
that they had formed before they adopted me at this church, and he ended up being my papa. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So there wasn't, just for listeners, I just want to make sure we're clear. In America, there's different terms. I'm sure in every country there's different terms, but what Kimberly's talking about is the relationship between the families is so close that it wasn't just the pastor. They were like family, even though they weren't, to the point she called them papa, and which in America is like grandpa.
Yeah.
So, or Papa can be dad too, a loving, but
Right.
yeah. So
Right.
anyways, I just want to clarify that because I was a little confused. Was this guy blood or was he a godfather? So now I got you. We're on the same page. So now you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
You're tiny with this baby inside of you, right? Which is a blessing, but not under those circumstances is ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Your daddy isn't talking to you because he
Right.
doesn't know how to deal with it. What's it like with your mom at this point?
Hands on. She said to me, which I had to go to my therapist about, because that made me go and make some choices and decisions that I did throughout my life. Is she said, even if I was 12 years old or 13 years old, because I made that choice that I was going to have this baby. They did not believe in abortions, and that she knows that females do, but that's on them, that they have to answer to God about. But regardless of the situation and how it happened, that I was going to have this baby, and that I was a woman now. So she literally said to me, David, that now I know your birthday's coming up, which you'll be 16 years old. You don't get any more birthdays. No birthday celebrations goes to you. It goes to the baby now. You're a woman now. That changed my thought. That changed my mind. It's just, from then on, when she made that declaration, she phrased and said those words, I chose from that day on to do the best I could to be a woman, as she said, to fit the woman's shoes.
Yeah, and I'm sure she didn't want to say it either, but she was trying to give you tough love and to slap into reality. Like, hey, you're bringing a human into this world. You need to
Right.
be there. That was her intent, correct?
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's tough. That's tough
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so now before we get into your pregnancy and having your baby, I want to go back for a second, and this may come up in the future, so you can say I'll get there. Were your biological mother, were you actually her child? Is that why she rejected you? Were you not her child, or she just, for whatever reason, didn't connect with you?
I was her child.
Okay, so you were legitimately her biological child, but was there a reason that she ever discussed with you why she rejected you?
She's never gave me a reason.
Okay.
I asked her, she's never gave me a reason.
I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry.
I've heard stories. I've heard from other people and from my dad and from my adopted mom that they were really heavy in church, and the Holy Spirit told her that I was supposed to have been a boy. Now, mind you, she already had the girl, my oldest sister, that this one was supposed to be a boy, and she was so distraught that she missed the Holy Spirit, I guess, word, and just disconnected her. Now, that's the story that I got. And I got that story repeatedly, that she felt really ashamed and could not take that she missed the Holy Spirit sign and word, that the second child that was being brought in the world by her and my father, wasn't the boy, was a girl.
Yeah, and that's so sad, because that's just such a lie and absolute confusion. And it's like, it's horrible to hear that. And again, it just breaks my heart. So, all right, we'll move past that then, because that's her own issue she's going to deal with. And hopefully before she passes, you can get the truth. I mean, hopefully she can have healing and you can have healing, you can have healing together. But let's pick up. You're turned 16, you're pregnant. Where does Kimberly's life go from there?
I want to share how, though, how tragedy can mentally shut you down. So I remember being the youngest one at that hospital, having a child. She was born July 31st. I turned 16 August 13th. And I couldn't cry once again. And the doctors could see the pain on my face. Of course, I had her natural, and I could feel just like anybody else, any other mother, the pain, the contractions and stuff like that. I just couldn't cry. And I went through so much mentally carrying her, and my body changing, and the mind, and what I now was told that I am. When the doctors put her in my arm, I remember the doctor, the first two doctors that I had from my children, I remember their names. And I remember him saying to me when he put her in my arms was, "You can cry. It's okay. You can cry." And I felt free to do it. But yeah, I wanted to share that because I don't think people realizes that healing and that mental status can go so far deep rooted that you're not even aware until you can go back and accept those things that you went through, that you're very traumatized, and this is why your body reacted the way it did.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that is huge, not just mentally and emotionally, but even on the lowest level physically.
Yeah.
You got to cry. There's happy tears, there's pain tears, but it's a necessity for humans.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you're not crying, it's not that, oh, look how tough you are. It's
Something's
broken.
wrong.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this now and you're like, I haven't cried in 8 years, or I haven't cried in 20 years, or I haven't cried in a year.
Right.
There's seriously something wrong with you.
It is.
I say that in a loving way.
Right.
Because I've been there, Kimberly's been there, and it's not a healthy place. So you're not having
a healthy place.
Yeah, you're not enjoying a full life, like God intended, if you're not crying. And I'm not saying be the drama queen or king either. I'm saying a normal, healthy, balanced life.
Yes.
So your daughter puts the baby in your arms. You said it's a little girl?
Yeah.
What was her? Oh, you don't have to say her name. I don't know if you want
Courtney.
to. Courtney. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm like, I don't want to say it. Wait a second. So you have Courtney in your arms. Continue.
So I go home, my mom is full throttle. she thinks that, she's like, new mom, and I'm gonna, and hands on, and I'm like, I got this. You just tell me once. I know what to do. I know what to do. So I, got into the swing of things, and went back to school. And once again, in the back of my mind is doing what a woman could do. I felt very nonchalant about being a teenager, that I'm fully grown. I have a child, and I got to do what's best for her. So the father was in her life throughout me, being pregnant, and after I had the baby. Matter of fact, he was there when I had the baby. And I started, continuing to have sex with him. And I remember, just like it was yesterday, I started not even caring. So why should I? I'm a woman, you know what I mean? Who's going to care about, this is how I just pretty much made my life. And this is what, as she would pretty much say, in our term, and in our household, was, when you make your bed hard, you lay in it. So I was laying in it, and good at doing whatever I wanted to. So after she was born, that relationship started being physical. I remember jumping out the car from times he wanted to hit me, running back and forth out of either his cousin's house or his mom's house, because he wanted to put his hands on me, and I'm feeling like I'm in love. So wherever he goes, I want to be right underneath him.
And part of you's thinking this is normal because that's how you grew up. You watched it. You watched your dad hit your mom, which is completely unacceptable. Yes. It's also unacceptable for a mom to hit a dad. Let's just throw that in there, because I've seen abuse go both ways. But the thing is, you're thinking this is partially normal, even though you know it's wrong. So when did it click? Like, this has got to stop.
It didn't then. It just continued until one day I said to my mom, I was in the 11th grade and I said, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to quit school. And she said, okay. So I did. And I got a job, and the abuse started getting worse and worse until I do remember saying,
Now, were you living with him at this point, or were you living with your parents still?
I was back and forth. Sometimes I ended up leaving and living with him and his mom, and we would start wanting to hit then, or we would go to stay over a couple of nights with his cousin. So, and then I would, go back home, and my mom would be talking about, stop running in and out, stuff like that. You got to get yourself together. And I'm just trying to get you the pattern of what had happened, as far as the steps and, in between. Yeah, we were back and forth. And I believe what really broke me to really get away is his cheating. I remember saying to my mom that I remember him having another girlfriend or expecting another baby at the time that I got pregnant again by him. And this was 10 days and within 2 years of me having my second child by him. And I remember that's like it was yesterday when she was saying, you were on pills, you didn't use that. And I was like, yeah, I was. I don't think I was taking them. Like that conception came in, I didn't care. I really didn't care. I was very careless. I didn't care whether I got pregnant or not. I didn't care because I felt like who cared at this point? I'd have made the hell of my life of having a child at 15. Prior to that, stuff that happened that I never shared to my mom and dad, so why? So
And I'm guessing that the numbness you were experiencing in this area was in all areas of your life, correct? Just a complete numbness, not caring.
No, not in all areas, but this particular time it was.
Oh, wait, hold on. I want to make sure, I don't want to speak for you. So at this particular point in your life, were you numb to everything or just this one topic?
I believe like to everything.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was, that's what I
Yeah.
thought I was hearing, but I don't want
Yeah.
to put words in your mouth
Yeah.
because it's usually we're not isolated. We don't compartmentalize feelings like that. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's full hatred of ourselves, whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
I'm just shutting down.
Yeah. And I said to her about because this is my first experience with, a guy and, cheating and everything. And she said, all men cheat. The only type of men that don't cheat is the ones that can't because of physical conditions and men that's dead. There's the only two that don't.
Oh man, it's more lies. You're just getting filled with lies the whole life, right?
Right. So I was just like, wow. So I think that kind of stemmed from me being with him a little bit longer than what I should because of this, advice that I got. And then I just completely got tired. One of the women that he started dating, she was out of the world. She was a match for him. And so she felt I was a threat or whatever. And that really sealed the deal of me really getting away from him. Now, by this time, I'm pregnant by him with my second child, but we ended up not being together at the time of her birth. I ended up dating someone and he was in the military. And I said to my mom when I was working, I don't think he knows that I'm pregnant because I was sitting behind the desk. She said, well, before you go out with him, if he's asking you out, you need to tell him, do you got his number? And I was like, yeah. She said, well, next time you call him, don't have him surprised. And she asked me, what did he say? And I said, he said he knew that I was pregnant and he just wanted to still be there for me. So anyway, we started conversating and I was telling my mom, about this man and he was a very good person, but she was in that era where if he had a military background and he was in the military and then he accepted me with 2 children, this is the man that I should marry, regardless whether I'm old enough to marry or not. This is one that should be in my life to take care of me. So they signed for me to get married to this man before I was 19. Well, 18. Yeah, I was just turning.
Maryland or Delaware? Where were you living?
Maryland.
Maryland. Okay, so you got parental consent. They were your legal guardians, and you got married before 18.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
That didn't last a year, but like I said, he was a very good person, and I remember doing one of those incidents that my ex, which was my 2 girls' father, we never had any kids together, but my 2 girls' father, the girlfriend at that time was still bothering me or whatever, and he stood up for me. And I remember that feeling of such gratitude, because I always yearned that. Now, I yearned it from my biological mother and my biological father, but when you get it, it's like, it's overwhelming to someone that, that missed it and yearned for it. So
yeah, I had somebody describe, when we're lacking something in our life, it's sort of like if you took a match and threw it on the green grass, the match is just going to go out. But when that grass is dry and starving for water,
right,
it's really hay. And it's as soon as you put a match on it, the whole field goes up in flames. So that was emotionally, when he was, like, you used the term, protecting you and standing by you and sticking up for you. When he was doing that, that just set you on fire all again, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, but like I said, it didn't last a whole year, and not that he wasn't a good person. We both wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for marriage. He wasn't ready for marriage. But again, my parents seen differently. So we got a divorce. I got a place for, my 2 girls, and continued on with my life, dating, seeing other men. And I end up repeating cycles of seeing older men. And I really believe what I was looking for was that validation and that trust that I had in my father.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be crude, but they call it daddy issues. Like girls who look for older men and they don't even realize they're doing it. They really want somebody to support them and take care of them and love them.
Right.
And men, actually, there's a lot of scumbag men who pray and they look for that. They abuse girls who are needy, and not needy in a bad way, but they want that love, and they see it and they exploit it.
Exactly. So I did date one that was older than me, and then that ended and then I felt that I had made such a mess in my hometown. Here, my biological mother still staying there, and my siblings, and I ran. I went to Baltimore. I contacted a childhood friend that was going to college in Baltimore and asked, could I, come stay with her? And mind you, I had my own place too, but I said to my mother, my adopted mom, and my dad at the time, just keep my girls for a month, not even a month. Just, I'm going to get a place. I gotta go. I gotta move. And they agreed. And they didn't say any questions, they agreed. And I went to Baltimore, but I do know I ran so that everybody else could have a life. I didn't want to deal with any issues. I didn't want to deal with running into my biological mom and still yearning for her acceptance and wanting a relationship with me. I didn't want to run into any of my siblings, and they were missing in action half of my life when I had these kids, So I just said, I got to get out of here. I just got to go. So I met my second husband in Baltimore, and he was 11 years older than me. And I'll never forget introducing him to my mom, my adopted mom, and letting her know that he was, how his age and everything, and that he didn't have any kids. And that was like bells to her ears, because she's like, and he's going to accept you with 2 kids. Oh, you that's who you have to marry. That's who will take care of you. And he's an older man too. Not too many men is going to, take care of you and accept you with 2 kids. That's not his own. And so I remember saying to her, okay, I'm going to get married. He asked me to marry him. And the day that I went to her house, she had orchestrated the whole wedding. She had got all the bridesmaids' dresses. She never told my biological siblings, my biological mom. She had who she wanted there. And ironically, she had my biological dad being the pastor, being the preacher to marry us. And my adopted dad giving me away. So it was so twisted, but mentally I was just like, whatever they want, whatever I could feel like I'm doing the best decision or the best choice for everybody else to help hopefully turn my life around so it won't look so freaking bad. That's where my mind was.
Yeah, you're like, let's just get through this and move to the next level.
At this point, I don't even get. So I'm sitting down at her vanity, and I remember putting jewelry on and everything. And I said, I don't know about this. I don't know. And I was getting, one of those cold feet, but I'm looking at just like, I'm feeling a glimpse of my life of something's just not right. I shouldn't do this. And she said, all these people that are invited, she said, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to get married today. She said, and you'll learn to love them. If you don't love them, my mom always used to tell me, you don't marry the one that you love. You marry the one that loves you. And this is what I got. So I got married, and he was a good provider, but he started the physical abuse. Like you said, he was older, 11 years older than me. He never seen me outside of 19 going on 20. Very controlling, very possessive. I was like a kid to him, and he knew this. And so any type of independence that I would try to get, like when I went back to school, it was a fight. It always ended up physical and mentally torn down. He would say a comment all the time is, nobody going to love you like I love you. No one's going to accept you with these many kids. So it would always tear my self-worth down because it was never built on a solid foundation. I had to reinvest in myself and build my self-worth, because this is what happened.
Yeah, and whether he realized it or not, he was programming you. Nobody's going to love you. Nobody's going to accept you. And it was just control to keep you under his thumb.
Yeah.
Wow. So, okay. So where does this go? This doesn't sound like it's going to end well.
So that marriage was the longest marriage out of the 4. And I stayed with him. And like I said, he was a good provider. We had very nice houses at one time. Every business that he went into, franchised the business, I supported him. I was really a level-headed somebody in my 20s. Consumed my life with my kids. I didn't go to parties. I didn't go to clubs. It's just my children was my world. And we had 2 children together. So I had the 2, and then me and him had 2 together. I started with the girl, his first daughter, and then our son. But like I said, the longer that I got into the relationship and the more I wanted independence, he would reel me back, as you said, programming, and say, you only can come up to my job on this day and this time. Don't come up here no other time or day. If I changed my hairstyle, it was a fight. If I dyed this, so it was just, he was around when unfortunately, my father passed away in 97. He was the one that woke me up and told me. And so we were in Baltimore, I was married, and that loss really did another pivotal point in my life, because that was my first experience as a loss of someone that I built trust in, that I knew loved me without a doubt. And I remember when he was getting word all the way to Baltimore that he was putting his hands on me, I remember him sitting down, calling for both of us and sitting us down and saying to him, Manny, now I'm hearing that you're putting her hands on her. I don't even do that. But if you got to put your hands on her, you can bring her back home. You don't have to put your hands on her, So I remember, once again, that light that you were saying, that match, was like, I had someone fighting for me and I'm losing it. I done lost it in 97. And it was very hard. I went into a depression, and that was not too long after our sexual intimacy started experiencing those challenges with my uncle, and that was after my dad's death. Yeah.
So now that kind of pillar of strength, and you knew there was unconditional love and you had trust in a man, really at that point, that was the only man you've had that good relationship with. Now he's gone. So now it opens up these wounds and the vulnerability. Yeah. So take us from there. What were you experiencing and how did you get through it?
So like I said, when I started having those nightmares, and I told my husband at that time then about it, and then I told my adopted mom, and the only thing she said, she did only what she knew. She just said, oh my gracious, if your dad knew, he would have killed him. But that was it. I was looking for more, but at least I told her, so, and I just said to her, yeah, you're probably right, and I think we went on to another conversation, but my anxiety and my impulsiveness, with all that coming to a head, just got worse. And here I'm not in a healthy relationship. God is turning that around, where because of the type of man that I had married, he had lost the business, he had lost the franchise, and we had lost everything and had to come back home to our hometown. I'm like I'm not in a good place. And this is when I started understanding that mentally something's wrong. And as if I continue to go this way, I'm not going to live the best life that I can. But what I tried to do was, until I got into another marriage, was compensate my fear and my unhealthy living to my kids. Everything that I tried to do, I tried to build that of, I never want my children to feel that I wasn't there, that I would abandon them, that they would feel what I have felt. So I overcompensated my life and just dwelt into the ministry and being there for my kids. If that sounds, if you can understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. You were finding something you could control, pouring your life into it, and ignoring the things that hurt.
Yes. Yeah.
So then what continued with that? You come home and it's not like you're the victor, you're at a low in life. So there's, again, the humiliation, the shame, not that it's deserving, but that's probably what you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And you come home, bringing back even more memories. So what happens to you from there, Kimberly?
So I answered a call into the ministry. And like you said, that was where I felt safe. I felt there was a purpose.
Now talk about that. Like, you just kind of jumped into that thought. What are you talking about? You accepted the ministry. What ministry?
The call to minister, to preach the gospel. Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, let's back up to make sure the listeners are understanding. So your life is in shambles and you're going to church, and you feel led that God's telling you to devote your life to ministry, telling people about his love. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I just want to make sure we connect that bridge.
Yes, perfectly. Yes.
We have listeners from 90.
And I've always felt that calling, but never to that strongly until then. And that's when I accepted. And it ended up going to Papa. I ended up going to him and actually letting him know what I'm experiencing and what do I do now. And he led me to the first step, that when you're called, no matter if you're in the pulpit or not, you're called. You just have to answer to it. And I remember him saying, "No, Kim, you can't wear your heart on your sleeves." But of course I did. But I ended up doing my trial sermon right under the pastor, and I invited, my adopted mom was there. I called for my birth mom to be there. She was there. So as you said, I drove into that. I put my all and my children. Now, it did not stop what was going on in my relationship, my personal relationship. If anything, it brought it to a head because we wasn't on the same page. And this is not a person that I needed to be in my life. And so things started getting worse and our marriage ended. And I remember having to come out of the conference because I wanted support with having a divorce and also support from leadership after a while. Now, my papa had passed away and we have other leaders now coming in the church. But I went to one particular one and to ask for support, to tell him, to talk to, my husband about putting his hands on me. And he did everything else but give me the support. One thing he questioned, was I doing what I was supposed to be doing at home to avoid this? Was I giving him sex? Like that was a reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whoa. Yeah, that's no bueno. That's not right.
Yeah. So I ended up coming out of the conference because I seen the support wasn't going to be taken and what wasn't going to be given. And then what put it to a head, I was pretty much told after pastoring a church that if I did come out and get a divorce, that I would be looked at differently, not the same with a husband, and that people would not take me seriously. I would have to dress like a school mom or whatever that meant. But pretty much if I wanted to continue to be in that conference and to have a upstanding title or whatever, be looked at or be, accepted, I would have to stay in a marriage and work it out.
Yeah. So what happens at that point? Like, where do you go from there?
I didn't. I chose to ask for an honorable discharge and come out the conference. And so therefore I came out the conference and I wasn't, still a minister, but not being able to probably, preach in their pulpit or in their conference.
Yeah. And a lot of people do, like there's so many churches. When you say the word church, it has a different emotional charge to everybody. Some people it's positive, some people it's negative. Everybody has a different experience with what type of church, what background, and a lot of churches. And, if someone gets divorced, they don't feel as though that person should be in ministry anymore. And right. We don't have to discuss that because everybody has their own opinion on it. But I believe the Bible. I believe you follow what the Bible says. And that's the standard to me. Right. So now you're how old at this point?
I'm in my 20s.
Okay. So you're still in your 20s, probably
20s.
Late 20s.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So where does your life go from there? Let's catch you up to today.
So then I get married again to someone in the ministry that was total, oh Lord, that didn't even last 4 months. But it was because I felt that let me do something different this time. Let me basically marry someone that's connected with God like I am. and it was terrible. It was like he was a wolf in sheep clothing. And so that was.
And did you guys have any kids together?
No, we didn't have any kids together. And the hurt, the distress that I went through in that marriage, that was more emotional and mental than physical. So I could speak on both parts, that one's just as bad as the other.
Yeah, they are. They're both equally bad. Now, at what point, now you're in 3 marriages, you dated a guy, had 2 kids, you've been sexually abused, you were abandoned by your parents, essentially. At what point do you see, I'm in a repeating pattern and this needs to stop?
Then that marriage, that's when I went to a mental health provider, and I was really broken. I was coming out of it, and I said to her basically what you were saying. I'm repeating, and something's wrong. Something's wrong. Something's wrong with me? Am I crazy? What I was saying to her, am I crazy? And so she brought out her pen and paper, and she said, let's go all the way from the beginning. And she told me from the beginning, when I, shared with her in the beginning of what was going on, what had happened in my childhood, and what took our relationship to another level in trust is, she said exactly what you said, and a couple of other people that I have shared my story, that this was the first time I've ever heard someone say this. And she said, first, let me stop and apologize to you. I'm sorry that you had to go through that as a child and take that choice away from you and not stay raised with your mother and father like you wanted to. But that's the 2 people that you only knew, that you started off with. Let me say that. And I just broke. I broke because this is the first time I heard this. See, my resource teacher, she didn't know about she didn't even go into it. She's an educator. She didn't know how my parents got me. She just knew that they had me and I was theirs.
Yeah, and back then, even today,
Right.
so many people growing up when we did with your resource teacher, her not knowing and not addressing it was probably better than somebody coming in with a piece of they have 1% of 100% knowledge and they try to be an expert. So it's actually probably a blessing.
Yeah, it probably was. But I'm just letting everybody to understand the setup. Yeah. So
and that's important because you're realizing
this is the first time I'm actually getting from another female that looks different from me. This is my first mental health provider is a Caucasian older woman. And I just broke in front of her. And I can tear up now because I remember just sobbing because she was basically saying, your feelings are valid. And I'm so sorry you had to deal with this by yourself, and we're going to get through this. She said, it's okay. But I want you to understand your triggers. I want you to understand why you make these impulsive decisions and what you're looking for. And what I was looking for, David, was validation and acceptance and love. And it's not from everybody. Everybody doesn't get that.
Yeah. And so what's this journey look like? So there's people on the edge of their seat. They've been listening to you. They're connecting with you. They feel the same way. They've been through some of the same type of circumstances. What does the journey to wellness look like, Kimberly? What were the steps you had to take, which I'm sure were not easy. They weren't instant and they took, they were painful.
Right.
But what did you have to do to get well?
I had to stop and reinvest in myself. I had to reinvest in Kim and learn to love Kim, the flaws and everything. I had to really accept through this process, I lost myself. I didn't even know about loving myself. All I wanted to do was be loved. But the first key is I had to love me to be loved. I was so busy trying to get validation and acceptance to be loved that I miss, I'm worthy too to be loved. You know, I was created to be loved the right way, the loving way, the healthy way, not being hurt, not being belittled, not being abused, not having to compromise, not having to buy love, but to naturally be loved, just how I had been created. You know, and I had to accept my flaws and just the wonderful creation that God has created me as my personality. I had to reinvest in myself, like you said. We all have different personalities, but until I reinvested in myself and understood my personality, I've always had a kind spirit. I've always been a loving person. I have not ever been aggressive. I shun to aggressiveness. I don't like confrontations. This is my origin. This is what my foundation has been built on. And I had to reinvest in myself and say, Kim, this is just a part of you. So when you detect or you feel that aggressive, that's not what you need in your life. That's not healthy. Instead of you embracing that because that is your norm or what you have seen, that is not normal. So I had to, that's the steps that I had to do, is get away from what I believed that was normal, that was unhealthy, and create a normal healthiness for me.
Yeah, and let's get to this is good, the nitty gritty. Just because you're dealing with this, that doesn't mean you stop being a mom. It doesn't mean you stop having family. You have to work, you know, there's normal life. Like, you know, we see these shows. I'm just going to pick one up. The Biggest Loser. I don't even know if it's on the air anymore, but you have people with huge amounts of weight and they go on the show and in a few weeks, they lose this like incredible amount of weight, but they had nothing else distracting them. It was total focus.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, what Kimberly is describing and what many of us go through, and if you're listening now and it's you, we might be 600 pounds of emotional baggage. And that's why if you can get to a place where it's like, I'm not saying go meditate in a commune in the woods, right? But what I'm saying is if you can get time away to really just commune with God and get the mental health help you need, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And then you continue the journey. But how did you do this while you were engaged and still in normal life, quote unquote, normal life?
I had to choose it for me because I remember making those decisions, getting up that wasn't working and choosing it for my children and still being abused, still feeling mentally anguished, depressed, disturbed, filled with anxiety, nervous as hell, didn't want to eat, sometimes wanted to eat everything.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, seriously. But I was like, I had to choose. This is not even for my children. And I got a now 6-year-old. And I tell people, I don't wake up choosing this for her. I choose it first for me because I know she's going to benefit from it.
Yeah, you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't have that love, you can't
exactly. Give it. So I choose it for me. And I do know everybody else in my inner circle, which is my children, will benefit from it once I choose for me. But I had to make that step, like you said, to choose for me. And when I had to write the book, I had my mental health therapist on call. Like you said, I still had to work. I still had to be a parent. I still had other things that, you know, I wanted to do personally in my life, but I had to choose to make steps for a better me. And that was incorporating and understanding what I was doing, the cycles that I was doing, and the techniques that I was using before wasn't working. No one should, and I'm still in my hometown, David, but I remember 4 or 5 years ago coming as a parent, going to a grocery store, still with a little anxiety or impulsiveness, looking around. Is this the day that maybe I'll see my biological mother or one of my siblings, or what's going to happen? Or is this one of the exes I'm going to see?
Yeah, that's
now,
real. That's real.
Exactly.
Neutral.
Exactly. And what am I going to say? If I see her, what can I say to keep her talking to me? And maybe this might be the day that she will say, you know, and really mean, we're going to get together and we're going to build a relationship. Till now, I'm free of that. That is not my responsibility. That is beyond my control. If I see her, I see her. If I don't, I don't. Do you get what I'm saying? But I remember living that way.
Yes. And places that should be neutral, like the grocery store.
Right.
Or places that may be positive, like church.
Right.
You're now visiting them in terror and panic and anxiety and stress, and it's stealing your joy.
It's there. Yes.
So what
and
did
peace.
you, yeah,
peace.
joy and peace. Oh, they go along with all the fruit of the spirit. But yeah,
Right.
I mean, to me, the most important things, pleasing God and having joy and peace, and then passing that on to our children, family, and friends, even strangers. I mean, love God, love thy neighbor, right?
Right.
But what did you do each day? Like, you're working with your mental health counselor, you're working each day, and it's, you know, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's a lot of work. But what were the things she was teaching you, so each day you tweaked your life a little bit better, a little bit better?
Like I said, choosing to build my own self-esteem and confidence in me. And
how did you do that? How did you do that? Did you like journal, then look at what you journaled and say, okay, this is the lie, this is the truth? Did she have you read certain books? What were the practical steps that helped you to wellness?
Yeah, well, she had me read some and write. She always knew that I like to write, because I was telling her during that second marriage, I would keep journals. And she said, continue to write every night, and just write how you feel. And I would, because she knew how my background was with music, and I still do that now. I'll just have my playlist on Amazon, just going from gospel to R&B to jazz or whatever, and just, you know, let the music embrace me. But any positive things that we talked about, and then I started incorporating as I started finding out more about myself, and going out and actually knowing that if I don't like to exercise, if I'm not an exercise person, well, let me try just a nature walk and see if I like that. That's healthy, that's positive. And that's what I did. And I started incorporating that in my schedule. I love it. But I had to make steps, and I had to choose to do them. And then I had to just on them. I had to do them. It's quite a difference when you talk about it and say this is what you're going to do, and you don't do it. When you make a choice that you want a better life, you actually put that work in action. I wanted a better connection with God and the decisions that I make, and to fill my heart with more love that wouldn't turn bitter or wouldn't recognize true love in the future, but be ready for it, be healed. So I knew that I had to build my connection with God more. So what I do is I don't wait to go to church every morning. I have a talk. I have I sharpen my spiritual connection, you know? And so I do the work, and it's a progress. It's a process, and it's progress, both, but it's not, I don't want people to think or look at me as that this happened overnight. I had to put the work in, because I had decided one day, I am not going to live like this. It's not healthy for me. And I am not going to have my last child here on earth to see that it's okay. It's okay to be in a relationship that is hurtful and abusive. No, it's not okay. And it's okay to know your self-worth and know who you are and learn who you are, even if it's late in the game, you know? But for them to see by example, I had to make this choice. I couldn't leave it to them to make the choice for me. I couldn't leave it for my adopted mom, she's still living, to make the choice for me. I had to make the choice for myself to choose to want a better life, to have this life that God said about, an abundant life. Peace I give you and peace I leave with you. And so I say so many times is I fight hard to have peace and I fight hard to keep peace. And they are work. It's a work in action to do those things.
100.
When I feel like I had to learn, when I feel like if something didn't go right on my job or something made me sad, or I think I'm getting overwhelmed or too much is going on from one end to another, either the adult children are having some difficulties here and I'm trying to deal with some household things or finances, or because we all live in a type of life. Things change, nothing stays the same. I invested in myself so much that I recognize, and I'll say I'm responsible of my own actions. I said I will socially drink when I'm about to celebrate, because you know what, I know me and I know myself, and I don't want to use alcohol or that feeling when I'm feeling overwhelmed. But once again, we're talking about these are choices that I had to make for me.
Yes, and those are healthy choices. I know this sounds silly, but like with you, like alcohol, obviously the best policy is don't drink. You can't become an alcoholic, right?
Right.
And the Bible talks about moderation and balance,
right.
and
Discipline.
Don't be given to excess and don't be drunken. So clearly drunkenness is sin, but drinking, some people think it is, some people think it's not.
That's right.
I'm the kind of guy, I grew up in an Italian American home. It was wine's wine, you have it with a meal, but if you get drunk, you're an idiot, So I grew up with a different mindset. Everybody has a different mindset about alcohol, but obviously err on the side of caution. But like you, whether it's alcohol or cigars or sleeping or whatever it is, if you're enjoying it, Ecclesiastes talks about enjoying the fruit of your labor.
Right.
But if you're using it to deal with stress as a crutch, that's dangerous. Red flag. We need to wake up and see what we're doing. And it can be stress. It can stress. The stress can lead us to alcohol, drugs, pornography. It can lead us to all sorts of habits and sins. So all of our listeners, myself, you, we all need to self-reflect.
That's right.
See where are we at? What are we doing and why?
Right.
So that's great that you were learning, like alcohol for me, bad. No.
I know when I'm going to do it. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So keep going. So now you're learning, you're growing. Bring us through that point in your life to today.
And by choice, single parenting and healing. And
now, was there a fourth marriage? You mentioned a fourth marriage, and I have down in my notes that the third one was the guy in ministry that lasted 4 months.
Yes.
Where was the fourth marriage and where did that fit in your journey?
Okay. So the fourth marriage was with, and I have a daughter by him, the last one. We got married in my late 30s, going on 40 something. Yeah. And we weren't on the same page. Good person, but he had a drug and alcohol. He was functional alcoholic, and our life just wasn't on the same page as far as very goal driven. I don't like to be content with just media, moderate or whatever. And that really taught me, this last marriage really taught me, even with the decision that he made as far as, drugs and alcohol, I'm not a user. And I like I said, I social drink, but I don't abuse. I know the difference. And even though, the marriage ended and we have a beautiful daughter together, it had really showed me about myself of wanting to be in a marriage or in a relationship just to fill a void and not even knowing if this person is really meant for me or really compatible to me and my future. I had to learn, and that one really took the icing on the cake. It's now okay to date. It's okay to find out about another person's past, how they was brought up, because that does make a difference sometimes in their adult decisions and their lifestyle. Just like it made a difference in mine. Once I got adopted, I was shown teamwork. I was shown you work hard to get what you want. I was shown stability. I was shown that you pay your bills, you pay them on time. You work as a team to go on family events, and you get nice things because you work hard for them. So a lot of times we go into relationships, or I can say for me, by not taking the time or feeling like we have to impulsively make a decision or rush into a decision because we don't want to be alone or want to fill that void of having a husband or having a companion, and not knowing even if they're the right fit for our life, if that makes sense. So I have been able to been excited with my journey and my season that I am now, that it's okay for me to learn about people and who will benefit or be an asset to my world like I am to theirs.
Yeah. And a lot of people are listening now, and they know, like, I know exactly what Kimberly's talking about. And there's other people who've been married. They got married when they're 18. They've been married 40 years. I'm like, what is she talking about? They don't understand. But This is the deal. This is what I believe. I think it's biblically supported. If we're still here, if we're breathing, if you're hearing our voice, our life's not finished.
Right.
Kimberly's not finished. She's not fully developed. I'm not finished. I'm not fully developed. You're not finished and fully developed. If we took a break and came back in a year, in 5 years, in 20 years, we'd be like looking back at this moment saying, you know what, since then, this is what I learned.
Right.
But this is where we are today. And this is Kimberly sharing her story. Right. And it's like super, there's so much you're unpacking. Thank you for sharing this with us. Because it's really going to help people. So now you get in this fourth marriage, it ends, bring us from there to today. And then we're going to transition to where you're going, so we can hopefully help you get there now that you've helped us for so long.
Okay. So yeah, it ended and we have a beautiful daughter together, and I am definitely in living the best of my life right now, and allowing God to really fill me with the wisdom and the knowledge and the healing process that I needed to journey through and embrace that, as you were saying, and I was just smiling because I know it's not the end. And all that I went through was to learn from, and to be able to be a sounding voice to other people, that you don't have to be ashamed of any decision, any choice, or any situation that you have ever been in, but learn that there's a lesson, there's a reason for everything that we go through. There's a purpose. And if we went through it, we're definitely able to speak on it and know that we don't have to feel like we are defined by it. We don't have to feel like that's the end and we'll be nothing. Everyone that's put on this earth has a purpose. And I say strongly, no one's a nobody. I don't care how you feel your life has ended or, has been, and made some choices that you feel like, yeah, this is the end. This is what the cards I decked. This is it. But if it's not fulfilling you and it's not putting you in a healthy place and where you know that you're supposed to be and go, you have to make a choice for yourself, to better your life. And that's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm living one of the best life that I can live because I started with the truth. I'm very genuine and authentic. It's nothing shameful of anything that I've said, anything that I've felt, I've done, and I've accepted it. And I've also accepted, was there choices that I could have made differently? Yes, but I didn't. And here I am. And I'm ready and willing to work on myself every day to get the best of life, best of quality of life that I can do. Everything goes perfect in my life? No. And everything is not going to go perfect in anyone's life because we don't live in a perfect world. But what we can do is believe that we have the control of our actions and behavior and responses. Once you understand that and choose to live without regrets of that, what anybody else do and say or behave will just roll off because you're taking that responsibility away from you. And that's what I dealt with for years, is carrying on the responsibility of other people's actions and behaviors and what they say. We can't burden that. But what we can do is live a life and choose that life that's better for us, a quality of life that we know that whatever choice, behavior, and actions we can have, if we allow God to help us and we help ourselves, because he's not going to force you. We all have free will. When we help ourselves by taking some steps and actions, then you'll be hopefully able to give your testimony and share your journey. But sharing your journey comes with a price of truth and genuine and authenticness and holding on to that and being courageous enough to say, I'm one in the number that's going to try and that's going to put my best foot forward. Now, will I stumble sometimes? Yeah. But giving up and falling down and staying there is not an option. And when you take those options away, the choosing, this is not what I'm going to do. I don't even speak that even in my house of failing or falling and staying there. We get up, we put another foot. If you got to crawl up, you get up and do and make those changes that you have to do, whether they're your environment. Take one day at a time, changing your environment, changing the people in your circle, all of it then starts coming full circle back to you. You have to make that choice.
Yeah, and that's actually a great segue over, because I was just having a conversation and we were talking about demons and we were talking about angels and we were talking about ghosts, right? I'm like, okay, well, biblically, when Satan fell, he took a third of the angels with him. Those angels are demons. We don't know how many there are, but there's a third of the angels fell, chose Satan over God. They're damned, but they're on the earth, except the worst ones. They're actually chained up, right? But the only difference between an angel and a demon was a choice. And every day we have choices, like you said, it's free will. So we can make a giant failure of our lives, or we can make a great success. And we have to do our part, and then God brings the increase.
Right.
But exactly what you're saying, Kimberly, is spot on. I agree with it. So let me ask you another question then. On your shirt, a lot of our listeners are through podcasts. So if you can't see this, Kimberly's shirt, Kimberly, what's your shirt and the banner say in the background?
Accept and embrace it all.
Yes. And so we have thoroughly explored those in parts, but if you were to wrap that up and give a message, what's that mean for our listeners?
Accept who you are, where you're going, and embrace it all.
Amen. And then in your story, from your birth through today, is there anything we missed significant that we need to address or you want to address with our audience? Or are we going to move on to the future for Kimberly?
So, like I said, I think, it's important that I'll share this, that I had to deal with, even with the not a fairy tale ending. I did have a conversation with my birth mom that I remember a really low point. Two moments that I'm going to share that was a low point that maybe is similar to someone else can relate. One particular moment, one of my siblings was having a child, and I met her at the hospital, and my biological mother was there, and I was filled with this anxiety again, and I wanted questions that was answered. Both, we're all grown, and I tried to ask her about, she was visiting my sister, about, our relationship and why. And she said, "You have a mother." And I left that hospital, and I banged on that steering wheel, and I just fell to pieces. Because if you had listened to my story before, all I've yearned was for her to accept me and to love me and be a mother. And now you're saying to me that I had a mother. How dare you tell me that I had a mother? Like, you just don't even care. You gave me to a woman that I didn't ask for that, So, and then the second time has been maybe not even 2 years ago. I seen her at the hair salon, and she was getting her hair braided or getting her hair done with another stylist. And I was with my aunt, which is her sister, because she's a hairstylist. And I still loved and yearned for this woman's conversation. She was in her phone the whole time. She did speak, but I remember getting my aunt something for lunch, and I asked her, did she want anything? Because we was going to go to the store across the street from the salon, because that's just the type of person I am. And she said no. But when I left before her, because my hair was done before her. My aunt, which is her sister, walked me out. And even though I felt it, she didn't have to say it, but my aunt said, "I've seen her treat strangers better than she treated you. I don't understand it." And even though I know my aunt didn't say it to hurt me, I did a little shopping spree. I think I bought $100 worth of stuff just because I was so hurt, and I remember that was the last moment. And when I cried and I got my, clothes in, I remember calling my ex mother, whom was like a mother figure to me, and explained to her what I had just encountered. And I remember venting and releasing to her, and even releasing to God and saying, "I'm at this moment in my life. I just need you to really touch my heart and take whatever anticipation of us having a relationship away, because I can't take it. I can't take it. I'm giving this to you just like I gave it to God." I said, "I really believe this woman would be better off if I was dead, if I was nowhere. That way she wouldn't have to deal with me." or deal with even knowing that she had me. But God, you're going to have to take this anticipation of me wanting her love, wanting her acceptance, wanting her validation away. I can't do it on my own. That was the moment. And I'm a living witness now, so that I'm letting you all know I'm still in my hometown. I released my book and I don't have a relationship with her, but I'm good. I just wanted you all to know how things that you may feel that you go through, that at the end may be, a highlight, a fairy tale of how you want it to be, may not come. And you will have to deal with it, but you can deal with it if you accept wanting better for you.
Amen. Amen. So that's such a powerful thought. And I was just reflecting and I'm looking at my notes. It's like you had that powerful prayer moment in this 5th grade and God just like performed a miracle in your grades.
In 6th grade.
In 6th grade. And your whole thing changed. And then in a moment, your whole relationship internally with your mother changed. And it was through that pure prayer and relationship with God.
Right. But mind you, I got tired of prior years. I run into her even at a gas station and fill her car up with gas because I wanted some type of connection. So I had to get tired. This is the point that I'm trying to make to someone. And when you get tired enough and you choose that, and you look at everything that you've done has not worked, but has kept you in an unhealthy place, in a place that you don't want to be anymore, you'll choose to do something about it. And I just want to give the listeners this: you can do it. See, I think I got so stuck into this voice, this hidden voice, that I wasn't capable. I wasn't able to. I still want what I wanted. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so good. And I know if you're listening to this, we're going to get to where Kimberly is today and how you can reach out to her and connect with her. But Kimberly, I want to just ask the same question, even though you addressed it. I love doing practical steps. So I have a friend of mine who has a mother that for the rest of their life, they will long a relationship with their natural born mother. And that woman is a horrible. Now, my friend is one of the greatest humans I've ever known.
Right.
Her mother is a disaster, actually been in the occult, a very harsh, horrible woman, narcissist, the whole works. But my friend still longs for the mother's love. You had that prayer, you said, but you had to get to that point to pray it. For the people listening, for my friend, for all my friends in the podcast that I've never met, right? The community. How would you suggest or recommend or help them start getting to that point where they can pray that prayer to God and be free?
Well, first first I would have to make sure and ask, is this what they want? Because like I said, at the very end, I had to decide it's not now what I want, but what I need. I wanted what I wanted. And I even tried to sabotage relationship that was meant for me, like my godmom that was coming into my life, that I needed to come into my life because I wanted my biological mom's love, not nobody else's love, So I distanced myself for almost 2 years from her. But first, once anybody that's listening or your friend that knows that they're ready, you have to be ready and willing to choose to want better. And understand this, and I had to get this too, by when I reinvested in myself, the way I'm created and the way we all are created, Do we deserve that type of love? Do we deserve that type of person in our life? Once you answer that question, then you start choosing differently. I deserve, whether they were from me, biological or off the street, I deserve that love, that unconditional, that Christ-like love because of who Kim is. Not because I had to buy it, not because I had to beg for it, but because of who I am. And that's not a forced love. It's a natural love. And then, do love hurt? I remember reading something that said, I don't know what's worse, that you did what you did to hurt me, or that it didn't bother you what you did.
Yeah, that's oh, that's
And I
tough.
kept reading that thing twice, and I said, oh my gosh. And it hit me like a light bulb, and I said, oh my gracious. And I don't know what's worse, but I do know I can't be responsible for that. I can only be responsible for my actions and my choices after this happens to me.
Yeah, wow, that just hit me in the head. Thank you. Right before the end of the episode. That's a really powerful thought and statement. You know, what's more hurtful, them doing it or them having no conscience about it? And
Yes.
the fact that I actually have had that many times, and I think the fact that somebody can perform a horrific act is terrible. But when they have no conscience towards it, that is just mind-boggling to me and super hurtful. So yeah, that's definitely a heavy one to end their interview with. But let's do this. Where is Kimberly today, and where are you headed? How can we help you get there?
Oh my gosh. I'm headed to just exploring all the possibilities that's not impossible for me to achieve. I've overcome and achieved so much that I put my mind to it. I'm not supposed to have the degrees that I have, and I have them. And I chose to stop my educational career thing. I said, now this is it. This is where this is what I want, and this is where I'm going to stop. But now I'm headed to achieve all the other possibilities, the limitless, through God that He gives me to accomplish, and reaching my message to anybody that's open to hear, and to just help, inspire and encourage that I'm just this one person, that if I know that I can sit before you and be authentic and transparent and say that freedom, being free of anxiety and depression is the best feeling ever. And that if I can do it, make the choice to have it happen, then you can too. But I had to put that choice at work. I had to put that choice at work, and I couldn't do it just for my kids. I had to do it for Kim.
Amen, and well said. So if someone wants to get a hold of you, Kim, and continue the conversation, or schedule you for coaching or just chatting, right? What's the best way for them to reach you?
Well, I have a website. It's www. Kimberly Anne Bell, all one word, the ANNE, all one word, .com. And that's the website. You can contact me on there. I'm also on Facebook, contact at Kimberly Bell. And I'm on Instagram, Kimberly Bell. So can be reached.
I'll put links to all those in the show notes so people get the proper spelling, and they can just click a button.
Right. And I can be reached at any time. I love to travel, me and that 6-year-old. So I can speak on, I'm actually putting something together now, Balanced Beam of Life, that I will be doing a session on the Wonder of Women event in DC. So I'm still putting material together, but that's one that I would love to cover again with women, because it's very much needed. And I know me and you have said that too, about the balance, that I'm still, it's a work in progress, because we all have different family dynamics and we have life. I have grandchildren and I have a 6-year-old. So, but I have to be mindful of the balance. And I'm getting older. And we were just speaking on and agreeing with, we're living in a world of changes. Changes is going to come. We might not want to get old, but we're going to. That's just the cycle of life. And even though I had my children, and the 15-year-old that I talked about, she's 32, she'll be 33 this year. And I'm getting ready to turn 50. So, I mean, I'll be 49, but I'm still mindful that generation is not the same as the generation that I'm dealing with now with my grandkids and my 6-year-old. But I also hold true to some morals and values, and understand that what hadn't worked then with me, as far as the communication, and that's a key in any relationship. Communication is the key. So with the communication that was lacked in my biological family home, and even in my adoption home, it's explored now in a different way. So we have to do things differently. We have to change with the times, but understand also that it can be a good thing. And we just have to embrace it, and communicate, be vocal, share, vent. It's soothing to the soul. And like you said, and cry. I was tearing up a couple of times on here, but it's good. It's good. It's cleansing. And sometimes I have to get mindful, and I now know, and I'm learning who to cry around, and who's my support system. Also be mindful of that, building a positive and healthy support system that will hold you accountable for, to stay on the right path, or when they see you're slacking, that they can motivate you, they can help you, and not hinder you, not distract you, not put you in a distraught situation. Because if you get distraught, then that's negative. That's not the right support system. And all these things I had to learn in the process, and build a healthy support system, and say, you know what, I need a moment. And respectfully, they'll understand what moment it is. Or if I just say, I'm getting ready to go there. And, not too long ago, about 3 months ago, I had a little crying episode about my father, because like we shared, that was my first loss.
Love.
Exactly. My first love, you might as well say, my first loss. And the overwhelming of the book, and the overwhelming of my life. And I said to this particular person, I said, if my dad was here, he would be so proud. And I just started bawling, and he understood. It's like, okay. He's like, yeah, it's okay. You go ahead and cry, get it out, because, we're humans. And like you were saying before, we're not perfect humans, but we have feelings, and we have emotions, and we have a voice for a reason. And we have to utilize it, and share, and get our voice heard, to help us, not to hinder us, but help us. And not only help us, as what I'm doing now, help each other. We can't get it by us, I want to share this one thing. My adopted dad had only a 3rd grade education, and he was so wise. But he said to me, and I always end usually with this, he taught me this scripture, and he said, Kimmy, he was the one that called me Kimmy. So that's why I named the book Epitome of Kimmy, because the epitome was the true essence that I found of myself. And the Kimmy is what he used to say to me. He was the only one that called me Kimmy. He said, Kimmy, listen to your dear old dad. He said, I want to tell you something. This is a scripture in the Bible, and I want to sum it up, and I want you to take this, do your ultra life journey. He said, your journey, he said, the life that you're living, The race is a race. It's a race, Kimmy. The race is not given to the swift nor to the strong. So Kimmy, you don't have to be so fast in making things quickly done. And you don't have to be the strongest. I know you try to be strong all the time, but the race that's given to you is not given to the swift nor to the strong, but to the one that endure. He said, baby, if you just keep on going, if you just keep on moving, it's given to the one that endures to the end. And that's what I can give to you all.
Amen. And for those of you who've listened to the end without enduring, I'm sure you enjoyed it. What a great way to close. So, Kimmy, thank you for being here today. You truly are a remarkable woman. You have a remarkable story. I know it's going to connect and help so many people. We really appreciate you being here today. And to our listeners, like our slogan says, listen, do, repeat for life. Don't just listen to Kim's story, but do the good that you've learned from it. Repeat it each day so that you can have a great life in this world and an eternity to come. So I'm David Pasqualone. That was Kimberly Bell. Kimberly, thank you again for being here.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we'll see you hopefully again soon. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next episode, or go back and listen to a previous episode. But thanks for listening. Please like the podcast, rate it, review it, share it with your friends, because if this helped you, please forward it so it can help other people. I'm David Pasqualone. Thanks for listening to the Remarkable People podcast. Ciao.
The Remarkable People podcast. Check it out. The Remarkable People podcast. Listen, do, repeat for life.